So what I thought we would do, again, we're all kind of in different places, is maybe review quickly what you should do when you get your packet of documents. Okay, so if you look at this PDF, which you guys have access to, I kind of like to take notes on 3 things. Hopefully your teacher kind of reinforced the importance of this. Because if you do this well, in theory, when you go to write the essay, you won't have to reread these things. Okay, so for example, for document 1, if you were here, we said that it refers to Britain becoming this center of manufacturing in the 19th century. Britain becomes a world power. And then what I did is I took some notes of outside information. And this is something I didn't stress a lot the last time I was with you guys, but when you do outside information, try to think about it in 2 different ways. Try to think of outside information in terms of historical circumstances, like what else was going on in the world that would explain the event in a document. Maybe you know some side information. So for example, document 1 here was about Britain producing things in factories. So what I did in my outside information is I put down a cause of the Industrial Revolution that's not in the document. Right? Do you guys remember what the word abundance means? If Britain has an abundance of coal and iron? A lot of it, right? It's like the opposite of scarcity. So Britain had a lot of coal and iron. Do you guys remember why coal and iron are important for the Industrial Revolution? Powers the steam engine, exactly. What do we do with iron? Buildings maybe, train tracks perhaps, right? Railroads, I already said train tracks. Okay, so I put that the British invented the steam engine, they had a lot of natural resources, people start to migrate to cities, right? That's the process of urbanization. Hopefully you can read my terrible handwriting. I still write like a 4th grader. But what I also do, and this is something I added since the last time I was with you guys, so feel free to make note that this is new, is I also try to take some notes about outside information that connects to the document but is going on in the world today. So for example, this is talking about producing textiles in British factories in the 1800s. Do you guys know what a textile is? Clothing. Okay, so it's talking about during the Industrial Revolution, Britain becomes this center of clothing manufacturing in the world, right? They're using their factories to do that. Well, if you look around the world today, and again, this is a little bit biased because this is something I do with my students, maybe you guys don't have exposure to this, but one of the homework assignments that I had my kids do this year was about something called the fast fashion industry, which is where 3rd world countries or developing countries are producing clothing so efficiently and so cheaply and paying their workers next to nothing that we tend to have this feeling of, okay, the clothes are cheap, I'll wear them a couple times, I'll chuck them, I'll buy something new. And that contributes to a lot of waste and also maybe contributes to, people being forced to work for these extremely low wages. So it's kind of connected to the Industrial Revolution, right? It's about textile production, but in a different part of the world, and how maybe the issues are the same. Because it does say in the source that the British used cheap labor in their factories. Well, if you go to a country like Bangladesh, they don't pay their people a lot of money to work in these clothing factories in a country like Bangladesh, which is right next to India. So again, outside information about the event itself, but also how the event is also kind of connected to the modern day. Because when you write an enduring issues essay, that's what you got to be doing. You got to summarize how people are being affected by a specific problem in that source, right? Whatever enduring issue you choose, but also you want to draw some kind of connection to what's going on in the world today, right? Maybe the issue is still very problematic, or maybe we've done some things to make it less of a problem. For example, we did this with document number 2, how document 2 in the June 2019 Regents talked about how the British basically controlled the tea industry between India and Britain, right? How Britain was exploiting India, right? Forcing the Indian people to grow cash crops. Well, things have changed since then. Why? We had Gandhi fight for Indian independence, and now the British are not able to exploit India the way they used to, right? So this is connecting it more to modern times to show either how the issue is still a problem or maybe the issue has changed and it's less of a problem. So ideally what I wanted to do today was take a look at the notes that we made last time and begin the next step of this process. So if you look at your checklist, what we've done so far in this checklist as a group, and again, you can always look at that YouTube video I posted to get a sense of this. We looked at step 1. We read and annotated the documents. And all I mean by annotate is take notes on. What do we take notes on? the main ideas in the document, the outside information that can correspond to that event, and maybe, some current examples of that issue if possible. And then finally, when you're taking notes, try to list as many enduring issues as possible, right? So if you take a look at the bottom of this, I put down here monopolies in business, poor working conditions, impact of technology, impact of interconnectedness. Those are all the issues that I found in this particular source. The reason why I listed more than one is ultimately you have to find one issue common in 3 out of the 5. So if you just write down one issue, you might not find that same issue in multiple documents. So always try to brainstorm as many that you can that could correspond with that source. So what I want you guys to do, since we're all in different places, and feel free to use your Chromebook to help you if you haven't been with me before, or you might have these notes because we took these in class. What I want you guys to do for like 2 or 3 minutes, and again, you could do this even if you weren't here because you have access to this now, look at the enduring issues that I wrote under each of these documents and write down somewhere or just type it somewhere on your Chromebook a couple of enduring issues that could be found in at least 3 out of the 5 documents. All right, why don't you take a second and do that now. So did we find any that's common in at least 3 out of the 5? What did we come up with? Interconnectedness comes up several times, yes, okay? So if you looked at the annotations, right, I'm looking at what I put on the bottom under EI, and I see interconnectedness for document 1. I wrote down interconnectedness for document 2. I wrote down interconnectedness for document 3, right? So boom, I know that that issue is in at least 3 out of the 5, so that could be an option for an issue we could choose. Do any others come up more than once? Maybe you guys have your own notes, or maybe you looked at mine. Okay, poor treatment of workers comes up in several of the documents as well. So what I would recommend doing, and this is in the checklist, and feel free to always take a look at this, if you're in a situation in which you have multiple options, I would pick the enduring issue that you might know the most about. Maybe you are best able to define it. Maybe you know a lot of outside information about it. Right? Me personally, I know a lot of examples from history and also in the modern day about how the world is interconnected. If I said the world is interconnected, what does that even mean? Yeah, relationships with other countries, right? So what could that mean in real life? If the US has a relationship with China, what does that mean? Trade and distribution of goods could be an example, right? Maybe we work together on certain projects. Maybe there's a diplomatic tie there, right? So usually when I think of interconnectedness, I think of a trading relationship, right? And trading relationships can be both good and bad, right? The good part of our trading relationship with China is that we get access to a lot of cheap stuff. But could there be a bad part or a negative side of interconnectedness with China? Exactly, right? If we begin to rely on our interconnectedness, thereby making us maybe interdependent, and all of a sudden we've got a problem with that country, maybe we don't get the things that we need, right? Or maybe we don't get the latest iPhone, and that can pose problems for our own economy, right? So issues can have both positive and negative effects. It doesn't all have to be negative, right? Technology has so many positives, but maybe some negatives as well. So I think for the sake of this exercise, we'll choose, because that's what I'm really comfortable talking about, is interconnectedness. I know I can use interconnectedness because when I did my analysis of the documents, I saw examples of people being connected in at least 3 out of the 5, right? The British connected to India in terms of the tea trade. The world connected to Britain to get access to textiles. For document 3, is talking about how developed countries are connected to developing countries as a way to save on labor. Okay, so there are many examples of this. When you guys get to the Regents, don't write about more than 3 documents. Could you? Of course, but I think it's better choose 3 and write about them thoroughly. That's probably a better way to go about it than trying to write about 4 or 5 documents. You kind of with me so far? So back to the checklist, right? What have we done so far? We've read and annotated the documents. We decided which documents to use. Okay, for me, I'm going to choose, for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to choose documents 1, 4, and 5. Why did I choose those? For me, I have the most outside information for those particular documents. So I know I can make a more write a more robust essay with outside information about those documents. And of course, they have the issue of interconnectedness. Okay? The next thing you should probably do, and this applies to your introduction paragraph, is you want to give names to the events. Okay, so for example, in our example, we're going to use document 1. If I go to document 1 and I'm going to write about it in as an example of history that shows an issue, I don't want to just say document 1 shows interconnectedness. I want to call this something. Okay, so you should go back to your documents that you use and name them something. Right, so maybe document 1 has a name. Maybe it's the Industrial Revolution in Britain. Maybe that's what you'll call this one. Maybe document 4, which if you remember was about child labor around the world. Maybe that's what you call it, child labor around the world, right? Maybe document 5 is talking about how communities in China are recycling old computer products. Maybe you just put e-waste recycling in China. Okay, the point is, and this is kind of a weird part of the process, try to give each of these documents like a name of a historical event. That'll make writing about them a little bit easier. Does that make any sense? Hopefully a little bit. Okay, so if you're following along, if you have a copy of the Regents Exam, why don't you go ahead and write on top of document 1, maybe call this Industrial Revolution in Britain. Maybe write that on top of document 1. That's the name you're going to give that document, Industrial Revolution in Britain. Since we're going to decide to use document 4 here, why don't you guys call this one child labor around the world? And then maybe for document 5, we just call this e-waste recycling in China. E-waste recycling in China. Okay, so now I can refer to these documents as actual events in history and not just random document numbers. And you'll see how this comes into play in a second, why we go through this step. So what I thought we would do is try to write an introduction paragraph for an enduring issues essay. So if you look at the checklist under step 5, I give my kids these sentence starters to kind of help with that process. I like to use a 5-step process for writing an introduction paragraph in which we start with the definition of what an enduring issue even is. Okay, so I'm going to write some of this stuff out, and I would encourage you guys to do the same thing, even if it's on your Chromebook or maybe in paper form. So I think a strong way to go about beginning your essay is to simply define what an enduring issue is, right? An enduring issue is a long-lasting or continuing problem or important development faced by humans across history. Okay, so I'm going to begin my essay exactly like that. So feel free to type along if you'd like. An enduring issue is a long-lasting or continuing problem or important development faced by humans across history. If you guys open up your essay with defining an enduring issue, it's a great grabber sentence. It's going to convey to the reader right away that you know what you're doing. It sets a good tone. Okay, so that would be my suggestion for how to start your introduction paragraph. Your teacher might have a different way of going about it. That's totally fine. This has worked for me in the past, and my kids have had some success with this. So this could be a good way to go about it. I think your second sentence should be dedicated towards indicating to the reader what the enduring issue is that you're going to choose. And this is a way of going about it in a more fancy way. It's not saying the enduring issue that I'm going to be telling you about is interconnectedness. No, I'm just going to state one enduring issue is one example of an enduring issue, if that makes sense. So I'm going to put, for me, I'm choosing the issue of the impact of interconnectedness. So that's what I'm going to put in my second sentence here. All right, so I'm going to write, interconnectedness is one example of an enduring issue. Okay, so now at this point, in our introduction paragraph, the reader knows the issue that you're choosing, right? You've identified one enduring issue common in at least 3 out of the 5 documents. You don't need to say, the issue I found in 3 documents was interconnectedness. No, don't do that. This is a better way to go about it. Okay? Third sentence of the intro, what you probably want to do is tell the reader what the issue means, right? Interconnectedness is when, and then see what it says here, define the meaning of the issue. Right, so I'll simply use the word interconnectedness again. Interconnectedness is the state of having connections or relationships between people, groups, or nations. Okay? So far, just to recap, we told the reader we understand what enduring issue means. We identified an enduring issue that's in 3 out of the 5 documents. And now I've defined what that issue means. Okay, 3 parts out of 5 are already done. The next part I would recommend doing in your introduction paragraph is telling the reader how that stated issue might be a little bit problematic. Right? Things are issues when they affect people in some way. And like you told me, sometimes interconnectedness could lead to maybe the exploitation of workers, or as Noah said, maybe you become reliant or dependent on somebody, and that might hurt your ability to be like self-sufficient. So again, this is why I implore you guys, pick an enduring issue that you know a little bit about, right? Don't pick an issue that you can't define. Don't pick an issue that you don't know any negative consequences for, okay? So it's gotta be in 3 out of the 5, but also pick ones that you're comfortable with. And if you don't know any of the negative effects, like you probably already saw them in the documents. So you could probably brainstorm in your mind, like, okay, what was the negative effect of interconnectedness in that document? Maybe I put that as my example for the introduction paragraph here. Right, so I will say, this issue can be a problem because it can lead to exploitation of workers and the spread of pollution. But here's the positive side, interconnectedness can also have positive effects, such as spreading high quality products around the world, period. All right, so what I did here, you might say, where did this information come from? What do you mean exploitation of workers, pollution, spreading products? These effects of interconnectedness are the ones that I found in the documents after I read and analyzed them. So I'm just giving the reader an introduction into why interconnectedness is a big deal, both bad and good. Does that make any sense? Okay, that's probably the hardest part of the entire thing. I basically summarized in this sentence here the effects that this issue has around the world. So we have one more step, and this is why I said it might be a good idea to give each document you're using some kind of a name. Okay, this is why we named document 1 the Industrial Revolution, why we named document 4 child labor around the world. Because what we're going to do is plug those event titles into the blanks of this last step here. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to say my 3 event names from each of the 3 documents. The Industrial Revolution in Britain, which is what I called document number 1. Child labor around the world, which is what I called document 4. And e-waste recycling in China, which is what I called document 5, are 3 examples of historical events that demonstrate the impact of interconnectedness. Kind of a long intro, okay? It's possible that maybe you forget a step or 2, the day of the Regents, but if you get the general gist of this, right? I think the most important parts out of all of it, things you should definitely not skip, are the first 2 sentences, okay? You wanna make sure you convey to the reader that you know what an enduring issue means, and you want to indicate to the reader the issue you're choosing and what that issue means. If you do that, bare minimum, you're in good shape. The other stuff is important, but probably not as important as the first 2 sentences here.